welcome everyone to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. And you can send your questions and comments to DJ at ArtistFirst.com. And now here they are, two of the wisest people on the ArtistFirst Radio Network, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Yeah, that's just not true. Truth in advertising here, folks. Well, thank you very much, Z-Man. That's very kind of you. And yes, we are two of the wisest people that either of us know. Actually, Margaret's very wise, and I'm just here basking in the glow of her reflected wisdom.
Here we go, folks.
Good.
You ready? You ready for this?
Getting deep in here. And speaking of being ready for this, tonight's topic, we thought we'd take a wild, radical departure into sex.
Mm.
But not, we're not going to go too deep.
I beg your pardon.
But no, we are going to talk a little bit about, and I think people hear the word, that three-letter word sex, and they get a little excited. And, there's some reasons for that. But I think what we see here today is oftentimes, really a focus on the very basest, or the very basic and basest form of that word. And what we wanted to do was look at it from the point of view of Samsara, which I'm probably saying wrong, and I say it all the time wrong. But it's the journey. In Sanskrit, there are two words here. There's sam and sara, and they really mean moving through really everything. Moving through life, moving through the cycles of creation and incarnation and death, and creation and incarnation and death, and going, in essence, moving your way, hopefully up into the circles of enlightenment from the base to the top. And one of the ways that people have envisioned that is the journey through the energy centers, through the chakras of the human body. And you can start and look at them on a human body, and they do move from, in essence, the root or the base chakra all the way to the crown chakra through the seven sort of, let's say, positions. And the energy of sex, the sexual creation energy, moves through them all. It is actually one of the motive forces of samsara.
The journey, yes. And to look at it in terms of energy, sexual energy, at its root chakra, it is just sheer procreation. It is the amoeba, the single cell. It's got to reproduce. That is it.
Divide.
And that is the thrust of procreation. You wish to continue in this physical form, and it's done by taking the genes and passing it on to a healthier body or a newer body form. And the continuance, if you think about it, it's what that force of life is doing is reproducing another vehicle by which those genetics can be expressed once again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always done in this cycle of birth, life, death. So at the base chakra, the survival chakra, it is just pure reproduction. So
if you look at if you talk about, again, let's say the forces of evolution, you start with the amoeba, start with the single cell, and you move your way through up into higher and higher and more complex forms. That can be looked at as sort of a journey of similar to the energy journey from the base to the crown. This is a physical journey, an analog of that on the physical plane, from the most simple life forms, which really have nothing more than the desire to eat and procreate, all the way up to much more complex life forms like people, which have really only the desire to eat and procreate. Wait a minute. But there's other things like art and cartoons and music. But then there's eating and procreating. But we're getting there. We're getting there. It's like it's a long race, people. But in fact, there's much there's a vehicle for spirit in the human being.
Well, it's just showing the life force, the energy, the life force is there. I mean, I just remember in biology classes when it began with all of this, they talk about single cells and then asexual reproduction, as well as then into sexual reproduction, and that is supposed to be a progression.
Yeah, and it is, and because when you have, let's say, cloning or an asexual reproduction at that level, you're not bringing in new. You're not necessarily getting the variation, or at least let's say the speed of variation you would get from, as you mentioned before, the mixing of the genes, and then you get to re-express with a change, with a difference, even if you think of it as random differences, then you have the idea that these random differences create an organism which has got is better suited for its environment or less suited for its environment, and you end up with progression of one sort or another, even if it's very, very slow. It's all in the physical plane, and once you start to talk about the human being and sort of the analog of that in the energetic plane, it does still start at the root.
Right. Well, when it lifts up to the second chakra, which is the sexual as opposed to asexual, you need that male and female component in order to have a viable life come into existence.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, with modern technologies and genetics, they can certainly test tube things. But this is what we're talking about is more than just the physical cells being mixed together. I mean, I don't know if people know that even when you're trying to, when a couple is trying to have a baby and they can't and they have to go down that test tube route, there are multiple eggs that have to be implanted, and not just joining the sperm and the egg together doesn't always produce a viable form.
Mm-hmm.
They don't always survive. So there's got to be more to it than just that this program that people think of just mixing the soup together and suddenly, life. It's like
And exactly, but again, the sort of the at that level, at the energy level of sexual procreation or asexual procreation, it's still very basic. It's very survival. You can see that all life on this planet has one or either one or the other of those two procreative vehicles, and it does. Almost everything that is living focuses on gathering enough energy to seek a mate, gathering enough energy to raise the next generation. Because why? Because again, in similar ways, similar to samsara, there is a cycle of birth, life, death, and if you didn't do the birth, gather energy, find a mate, procreate, death would be the end of the set of beings that is trying to do that, trying to procreate. So in the physical, the base chakra and the second chakra are what all life requires, if you will. They require that. Without any sentience whatsoever, without anything other than just that desire to continue into the next physical generation, you have a world teeming with life. You don't have a world that's filled with spirit or heart or love or or all the other things that are that we consider essential to our being beyond those two. But you do, regardless, you can't cut yourself off from those two. You can't say I start at the heart chakra and nothing below, because then you're just floating. Then you're just rootless.
Well, you're not human at that point. If you want to cut yourself off from that aspect of your humanity, then you're a fragment of yourself. And we're down here because we are experiencing the range of life that is, and bringing in the gift of sentience to acknowledge what you are feeling and experiencing and thinking. So what I wanted to address was the fact that the concept of how important it is to continue your bloodline in this world. I mean, that is the push of what's going on. And in certain languages, I believe it's Hebrew, but life is always looked on as a plural. It's never looked on as a singular life. You are all always addressed as lives, plural, because it's acknowledging not just your past ancestry and the lives that were connected with your bloodline, but what you are going to produce. So that's a completely different mindset than how we in the Western world are looking at life. It's like a singular life, almost.
Yeah, well, my life.
Right, without any kind of connection or attachment to anything more than what your particular wants or needs are. This is an acknowledgement that the physical component, the genetic component, is important and needs to go on as an expression in this particular world or plane. And that is the foundation of that expression, that will to have a child.
Despite all to the contrary.
Right. To have this expression of you. It's a physical, how do I explain this? Your soul finds itself reflected back in your children. You when you're out in the world, and I think we've had this discussion before with a number of people engage in relationships because they're looking for a reflection of themselves in the other. And so it's always this trial and error thing that seems to be happening. Is this reflection true? Are we together in this? And coming to a point where you do have that reflection, then the desire to bring another life in that reflects back to you, your physical bloodline, traits or aspects to you. There is a response deep inside of you that it's just almost without words. It's an incredible joy.
Well, and there's the recognition. And you mentioned before that, in the West we kind of think of ourselves in a very singular life, but none of us can get away from our families, no matter how hard we try.
It's true.
You'll do anything, and they'll hunt you down on Thanksgiving and want you to come. Anyway, but no, you can't get away from your ancestry, from your tie back to your bloodline, to your people. And it's expressed in so many ways, many of them almost unseen, very subtle ways. There's a show that we've watched a lot that in essence it's reuniting people who've been separated by, in essence, these kids have been adopted and they've lost contact with their birth mother, their birth father, and this show reunites them. And it's a lovely show. But there's always this recognition of blood, and it's more than just physical characteristics. Of course, there's always that, oh, you've got my eyes, you got my nose, this and that. But there's an injury that's done at a very deep level that drives the people who were adopted or separated to find their roots. They feel disconnected, even though they've gotten everything else. They have love. They've been nurtured. They've been given lovely homes and wonderful relationships with these people. But as soon as they realize, or they may have always known, that they aren't blood, that they aren't related by blood, they feel a lack. They feel that somehow they need that blood connection. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Like they'll go looking, and they'll find out that, yes, you did have XYZ relative, but unfortunately they passed away. And they feel the injury of never having known this person, yet they feel the loss. So there's as you said, a physical kind of calling back to those from which you came, the bloodline you came from. And then there's this need, and it's separate but very closely related, where you find somebody who you can have a relationship with, and then both of you together, the male and the female in the second chakra, join to continue. It's where two wish to go and procreate and go outward towards infinity. We all know here in the Soul of Everyman and everywhere else that we're not going to live forever. We're going to try, but we're not. And so therefore our throwing ourselves forward into infinity, into the next generation, to beyond us, is our children. And then we are also thrown here by those behind us, whether we know it or not. We are their throw to the future. So you owe them that. You owe them the respect and the debt. You owe them the debt of your life. You owe them the fact that you're there, in essence, to carry on part of what they wanted. Yes, you have your own life. Yes, you're your own little person. Okay? but you still owe something. And you feel the lack if you aren't connected. But you owe something to those who put you here. And you owe, in essence, you throw yourself forward to those who will now, in essence, owe you. But you put them here to carry a little bit of you forward. And yeah, it's your aunt's unfortunate nose or whatever, but it's more than that. It's part of their, and this is on the physical plane, of course, but it's part of keeping that bloodline, that physicality, that presence, in essence, alive. That those lives of which you have been identified with.
Well, that's the energy that I'm speaking of. The lives are pushing forward in that moment in time. Mm-hmm. And that impulse is very strong. It needs expression. It needs to be able to see itself in multiple faces and aspects. That's part of the beauty in the creation, the diversity as well as the expansion. So understanding that as human, this is part of our physical call and need to be acknowledged, to be seen. It's part of being seen. I think we said this before. Small children, they need to be seen those wonderful little hide and seek games that you do, or peekaboo games. They just want to be seen by someone, mostly your mother or father, but an adult that means something to them.
Right, acknowledges.
Mm-hmm. And as that goes onward, as you mature, it's a constant thing. That need to be acknowledged grows at every stage of your development.
Right. And the acknowledgement of those who are your blood is sometimes is usually and almost always more important. I mean, you want to please others, but you want to have your parents, your fathers, your mothers' approval because it's something that matters to you.
The love is deep.
Mm.
I mean, that's what it really comes down to. It is a yearning for that love relationship. And if the needs are not met, then they turn negative. And it's again that phrase: any attention is good, positive or negative. They just want attention.
True. And that's where the toxicity or the injury that can be done by a parent, why it's so powerful, because the lack of that approval, the withholding of it, or the conditional approvals, all these other things that people do, and they're terrible and many. We don't want to dwell on them, but these become deep injuries that are very difficult to heal, maybe never be able to be healed. So there's tremendous power in having the bloodline relationship.
And that bloodline relationship lifts you from the second to the third chakra because it's the manifestation of power in the family, in the bloodline, and its interaction with the outside world. That's what third chakra is.
Yeah, explain it a little bit, because
Okay, well, just that the third chakra is a power center for the body, the physical body. When you understand that your bloodline is very important, then having children in that third chakra means that what you're trying to do is to establish your family as a powerful unit in this particular world, in some manner, some way, some shape, some form.
Right.
So there is that tribal aspect of, okay, this is where our tribe is.
Right, and this is our place in the tribe.
Mm-hmm. But our tribe covers this range.
Right, as power.
Mm-hmm. And then you've got, this is my society or my culture, and this is what my culture does, and this is what, how we express ourselves. And that's when you get into those wars, those tribal wars.
Right. Or just simply power over, power under, where relationships then become inequitable. At the third, at the third chakra is where you have appetites and desires and power and dominance and submission and politics and all those things which it's in many ways they become conflict. You're exercising power within the body. I mean, when you talk about certain forms of martial arts, your power center, your hara, is where your strike comes from. When you hit, or when you turn someone, when you change their balance, when you move them using your hara. You take control of their center with your center. You hit with the power from your center, from that hara center. So a lot of conflict, martial arts, wars, power is all in the third.
Right, that's a physical manifestation of the energy. It expresses itself that way. And basically, if you haven't raised your consciousness past power, then this is where all the trouble starts.
Well, especially if you're talking about the sexual energy, when it comes up, and if you put the sexual energy into power, then you get things like, dominance, where one partner dominates another. You get things where you have relationships which are based on conditional love, and love which is denied or made a way of controlling people.
It becomes a control issue. Someone wants to have control over someone or something.
And also appetites, lusts.
Yes.
All from the third. When you bring sexual energy up into the third, it becomes lust. It becomes insatiable, or it becomes it can turn sexuality, which is procreative and generative, into something which is much more dominant and warlike and
it's very eye-centered. It's
very eye-centered.
very eye-centered because it's all about my needs. Whoever the dominant one, it's about their needs and satisfying only that need, and that's it.
Right. And it becomes appetites like you are when you're hungry. You have to satisfy it with a hamburger or something. But in this case, now your hunger is for sex, for gratification, for pleasure, and you get these basically get people who are sybarites, or you get them who are they live for nothing more than conquest, or they live for nothing more than gratification.
Right, and that is so one-sided.
Mm. And sometimes to the exclusion of generative. That the third chakra will push away the second. They'll say, well, I want the pleasure, but I don't want the burdens. I don't want to actually generate and procreate. I just want to take energy and not give energy. Procreation is always give and take.
Right. So that you can have that balanced form, because you're sharing at that point. And bringing that sexual energy up, its expression in the heart, is what most of us are trying to come into.
And the thing is, so and we've kind of talked about the first, second, and the third here. In those three lower chakras, and people get stuck on lower, higher, middle, this one, that one, right, left. No, the lower chakras are literally just, from the point of view of samsara, they are cycles of rebirth in which you aren't really progressing very far away from let's call the animalistic or the physical world. When you stay third, second, first, you're staying very physical. Third is also hunger, it's appetites, it's power. It's very, very, very physical world orientated. You are acting in the physical world. You are taking, you are eating, you are doing all the things with you're not moving, as you said, just began to say, into the heart. And things start to change there, and they start to change dramatically. And there's a interesting, if you look at our website, or if you look at any of the pictures where you see depictions of the chakras in the body, there's a good separation between the third between the third chakra and the fourth, between the gut and the heart, between the hara and the heart. And that's true in the body physically, but it's also true in the mind. The third chakra is also the mesentery. It's also that sort of vagus nerve brain down there. The one that says, "Hey, let's go eat that hamburger. Woohoo, it looks good." But there's a lot of brain down there, and we all know people who think with nothing but first, second, third. Sometimes just first and second.
Sometimes just the second.
Just the second. Sometimes just the first. But I would postulate, and I think this will be something that we can go into much further detail in the second half hour. But I would postulate that you don't start to move truly onto the path of human enlightenment until you encapsulate the first, second, and third, and move that energy up into the fourth.
To bring your awareness up to the fourth, you have to be aware of it first before you can move anything. And sexual energy is hard to. It's an energy that flows, so you can't just pick it up and put it someplace. Like, I'm going to put my energy here in this chakra. Like,
you need buckets.
Oh my.
Yes, a couple buckets.
And to bring your mind to a point where you can actually flow with it, because it's all about flows. Just as with sex, it's all about flows.
Exactly, but and again, I think that the person it's not complete if they just stay in these lower chakras. And that's where you have the fragments. That's where you have folks who are much more concerned with power, or much more concerned with gratification, or much more concerned with just the baser nature. It's not that those things aren't important. They're foundational. They're incredibly important. But you can't stay there and call yourself fully human.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
And with that note, we're going to take our fully almost human selves, and we're going to move into the commercial break for all you humans and us and everyone else. And then after the commercial break, we'll talk a little bit more about moving up into the heart.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Taking God on Patrol is a first-person account of the world of law enforcement from the perspective of a Christian police officer in the 4th largest city in America. From speeding car chases to the crossing of the thin blue line, author Mark S. Cariner seeks to find God's biblical truth in a behind-the-scenes look at law enforcement. And check out Mark's newest book, The Tactical Heart. Both are available at Amazon.com.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the 4th Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on ArtistFirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
You are listening to The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Let's get back to your hosts. It's Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man. And tonight's topic, because we're rushing back to it, is sex. See, and you missed it all. We did all the sex in the last half hour. This half hour, we're not doing sex. So all you folks that listened to the first half hour, you had a treat. And in fact, we're going to do sex this half hour too. So you guys who are just joining us now, don't worry. But we're going to do it our own way. So last half hour we talked a little bit about the actual topic of the show is the samsara of sex, and in essence, what we're talking about is the journey of sexual energy through the chakras, through the person, the energy centers of the person. And we just about reached the heart. We'd gone through the first three chakras, which are what people normally associate with sex as the second chakra, the generative. And then they often confuse and get the third chakra, the power center, involved with sex. But I would say, and we said this last half hour, though, you really don't become fully human. You don't really start to understand what you're doing with your sexual energy until you reach the fourth, until you reach the heart.
Mm-hmm. The heart chakra is the next one on the rung, but it's also the balance point of all 7 chakras. Ideally speaking, the act of sex incorporates all 7. Okay, but that is something that there has been a lot of study done in the Eastern cultures about bringing your energy up through the chakras that way.
Kundalini.
Bringing your Kundalini energy up and have it all activate. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about that once we get through 4 to 7. But for the chakra 4 is the heart center. It is the balance center energetically of your etheric body. And it is the point where your perspective changes. It's no longer about you. And that's usually the biggest leap that most of us have to make. Because when it's at your power center, it's always about you, or what you like, or maybe what that other person that you're dealing with is doing. But when you're coming up to the heart, your concerns are always about the other, who you are involved with. There is that dance of the Tao, where you see the yin and the yang moving back and forth and around and through. And the other thing I want to bring up too is samsara itself has to do with the journeys that your soul takes. Okay, whether or not it has to do with what people think of as reincarnation, we're talking about it in terms of consciousness states and awareness states of your soul, and your soul is vast. It is vast. And this touch point, your body, is the intersection of your consciousness into time and space. So if you think of yourself as that kind of manifestation, instead of, oh, well, I'm bored today.
I'll get some new shoes.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the heart chakra, sexual energy takes on a whole different frequency. It lifts up because the consciousness between one I and the other do this incredible dance. And that byplay is an exchange. It's always this incredible exchange, one to the other. And in the heart, what you find is, because it's the balance point, the first, second, and third energy chakras want to stabilize this experience, because it has the ability just to begin to walk into the ecstatic. Okay, so what it literally needs to do, first, second, and third, is to be able to hold present without losing itself. And that's when the internal disciplines come in. That's why the hara is important, because there's a lot of breath work involved with bringing that energy up and holding the frequency there. And it's done, the hara breath work is done by both partners, male and female. in order to hold that state. So in the heart, the exchange of energies grow, and it's just spiraling up that happens. The love that they feel, how do I say this? It's almost like, you know how a tuning fork works? Where the tone becomes amplified, and anything of that tone begins to also resonate. The tone resonates anything else in the room that is of the same frequency. What's a better way to describe that?
No, it's perfectly correct. In essence, you reach a resonance, and so it amplifies the specific frequency. And you can see this in the physical world in lots of different analogs, but in fact, in the heart energy, the two become one. Prior to that, in the first, the second, and the third, the two are two. There are two beings doing the procreation. There are two beings fighting. In the heart, they are one. And as you mentioned, the Tao is one thing in which you see both the yin and the yang, which are always usually referred to as the male and the female energy. And if you look at the Tao, you see also that within the yin, there's a piece of the yang. Within the yang, there's a piece of the yin, and they constantly revolve around each other. They are one thing, each one completely balanced, each one carrying within itself the full aspect of the other, and yet no one of them losing themselves. You become, in the heart, the two become one, and the one becomes infinite. You can now reach for infinity from the heart. You can't reach from infinity from the root. You can't reach for infinity from the second chakra. You only can get there by getting up into the heart and beginning the journey of humanity from the heart. Before, if you look at it from the point of view of samsara, the journeys that are in the lower chakras are the journeys of the animalistic physical world. They're important, incredibly important. You need the hara in order to breathe, to power yourself, power your body. But you don't start to reach for infinity until you get to the heart. And there's more to go. But you must get there. You must become one in the heart to go further. So the idea that you're doing here is that you're realizing that you and the other are distinct and different, but you're also one, and that your energy reflects the other, that your concern is to give to the other and to receive from the other. You go away from, I'll take from them and eat, I'll dominate them and be on top. All that stuff, you move away into the heart to, we are one. We are recognizing our common humanity like we do on the Soul of the Everyman. Ooh, see what I did there? But it's true. It's true. We start our human journey when we start realizing that the other, that the separation, that the illusion of separation is exactly that, an illusion.
And again, I go back to that resonance, that movement that you see in the Tao, where the yin and the yang are almost dancing around center. The resonance that gets set up allows for the integration of all the chakras. You've got to have that, because as the energy rises through the throat, the breath becomes vitally important. And what is, how do I even say this? In your own life, the words that you speak are exceedingly important. They basically set the, almost like what we were talking about before, where you're looking for a reflection of yourself in your outside world, where your voice, what you speak, and the frequency that you speak in that moment pretty much sets the dial of what kind of reflection will come back to you. You're setting the
Also the manifestation.
yes.
The heart energy, the balanced heart energy, powers the manifestation. We're moving into the fifth chakra, which is the throat chakra, which is the voice, and we can also talk about, if you in the Christian tradition, the word made flesh is the heart energy going into the word and manifesting the universe. I mean, that's what that means. That's what when we talk about the word becoming flesh, what it really is that the heart energy spoke, let's give the words, let there be light, and there was. That's manifestation on a, let's call it a universal God scale, but we all possess that power once we get up into the heart and then move our words into the fifth, move our heart energy into the fifth.
And its manifestation is powered by that balanced heart energy. That the idea is to come to it so fully that you begin to realize that it really is love that powers everything. Okay, and setting it off by spoken word, speaking that incredible unconditional love.
Exactly.
Sets everything off around you, brings everything around you up to a higher manifestation. And the idea is having spirit here with you, and being able to speak into creation.
And here, and the thing about the word at that level is exactly that. It becomes, remember we were talking about truth.
Right.
We were talking about how when you give your word is your bond. The word is powered by the heart energy, and then the heart energy speaks truly, and it hears truly, and you have relationships through the word, because you can have a relationship, and oftentimes relationships are wordless, but a lot of times relationships are based on the word, on the understanding, on the hearing and the speaking. I think it's often confused when people say the throat chakra. They think, well, okay, that means I get to talk, and people do talk. But you also have to listen, because if you just speak, you are only emitting, and the heart requires both emitting and receiving. And you have two things. You have two ears and one mouth. I remember hearing that once in a while back when you were. It means you should listen. Listen is twice as much as you speak. And in fact, your word is incredibly important, but to hear others, to hear and be present, is incredibly important as well. And part of that fifth is to hear as well.
And understanding, too, that the words, if you look at them as energy, when there is an interaction between I and the other, that exchange of energy is almost like a line of light that gets interwoven between the two of you. The two of you begin to weave a form into existence.
Right.
And that is an amazing act of creation.
Yes, like you could for argument's say do a radio show with someone you really love, and your words could weave this incredible tapestry of light. Just,
oh my!
This is a weird, oddly specific example, but in fact, where does art and music and poetry and all those words come from? They come from up through the heart, out through the mouth, to the ears and back. The flow of art and creation and engineering and all the things that we do is the heart through. The manifestation of the word is also the manifestation of the fingers, of the soul, of the flesh to create. To understand how we move in the world and how we interact in the world. It's not the dominance, which is the third. It's the other side of that, where it's the creative force expressed, in the balanced form of interaction, not dominance.
Mm-hmm. And understanding that you also choose at that point what to speak.
Free will is the word.
Mm-hmm. This is the point where your free will is expressed. And so understanding that the vast range of the creative tool that your voice is, your throat chakra, the fifth chakra truly is, and understanding that you weave and interweave energies,
right,
is mind-blowing, frankly, when you think of what are we creating in this moment.
And so incredibly important. When people say that when you speak, your words have power. They can wound. You can cut someone to the quick. You can cut to their core with your tongue. They say the tongue is the sharpest instrument. You can hit somebody one at a time, but you can with word improperly used, you can destroy millions, a nation.
Right. You can destroy or you can create, and that is the choice that you have when you open your lips.
Yes.
It's an amazing thought.
And if you don't listen, you also have the ability to be very destructive. So once we get out of the heart and into the fifth, we're really starting to see the sexual energy, the energy of life, of creation is now really manifesting itself in the word, in the hearing of the word and of the giving of the word. But we're not there yet.
Right. Well, when sexual energy rises to the sixth chakra, that is the third eye. And that has to do with other realms. And that usually just blows people's minds. But if you have ever observed a medium who is channeling other souls, they have to use that sixth chakra vision to be able to make contact. Okay? And they do that usually by connecting into the relationship that the person that's come to them has been asking. You know, it's like, I'm concerned about this person that I love that has gone over. So the person who is acting as medium at that point keys into that relationship. And it's usually a relationship based on love. Imperfect though it may be, but it's still love. So your sixth chakra, if you look at it that way, you understand you have the ability to key into other realms where the souls of those that you love reside. The realms are made up of life energy. It's just we don't perceive it. You would need to have the sixth chakra open. You need the third eye open in order to begin to perceive all of that.
You perceive the deeper reality. You know, when you get to the sixth, the word is very ethereal, but it's still oftentimes in the physical. The hearing is in the physical. When you get to the sixth, you're now projecting yourself, your energy, into the spiritual, into the realms that are not in the physical. You haven't necessarily reached the very top, but you are perceptive. You see into the heart. You see deeply. You start to see. And you start to understand that life here is a limited life, and that there is a much greater life which encompasses many lives. And again, Samsara, you start to see that this is an infinite. You start to see the vastness of what you are, that it's not tied to this one physical existence, even how wonderful and grand it may be, how incredibly grand it is to have this wonderful symphony or whatever, all those things that you're able to get to at the fifth. You realize that even that, there's much more beyond. There is that within which it all resides, the much grander you, the vaster you.
And the understanding that you will be able to speak to souls at this point.
Not time-bound either anymore.
Right, exactly. So it's understanding that it's not, it's like a form of, like heaven, but not the heaven where God, who is creator, absolute existence is. This is the realm in between earth and where he who is creator resides. First cause, pure energy, without bounds of human understanding. This, at the sixth, is where God is pictured as having some type of form, or so that we as humans can relate, although our core being is more than that even. Right? This is all about consciousness evolution for ourselves.
Right.
So allowing that wonderful sexual energy to come to that sixth, you begin to see how love endures, and there is structures that have been built through time, through space, through lives in that realm. Levels of heaven, if you would. And then going up further from there is when you are in contact with that which is the source of love.
Exactly.
The source of being, the source of all. And at that point, there is no word. But it's understanding that as a human being, the sexual act is supposed to link all of these realms together.
Right, because it's the creative act.
And centered in the heart as expression, balanced form. That is the idea of why there is samsara. You are taking steps into understanding what unconditional love actually is. And you begin to understand how this body is a vehicle for it. There is an ecstasy that goes beyond all words. And that is your natural state, believe it or not. So what does it mean not to be in that state? And that's why we're here.
Right. And that's, the Buddha's revelation, all life is suffering. Not saying that every blessed minute of your existence is going to be horrible. It's not, even though it is. It's not. What he's really saying is that the existence here is separation from where you've come from, where your source is. And we are in exile here, in his revelation, we're in exile here, and we're trying to get back. It may take us a relatively long time. Still, it's just but an instant when you talk about the all. But during that time, we have the opportunity to experience.
Right. And it has to do with centering in the heart. It's understanding that for us as humans, we've got to be balanced in the heart for this to happen. Because if you go exclusively into one of the chakra realms, like say you're trying to just sit in the sixth realm,
forever,
sixth chakra, you are disconnected. And what happens is you who are a soul down here, you become fragmented. You're not including all aspects of your being. You are fragmenting your being. And you can't enter into that realm of wholeness without being all there.
And we know a few people who aren't all there.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
But one thing we all know is that Margaret is all there.
Okay.
And that I am not all there.
Oh, stop. We're all coming together in some way, shape, or form.
It's true, and this is the key here, is that the generative, the sexual energy is a vehicle. It's a flow. is not something that you dwell in either. You have to come up into the heart. You have to remain in the heart, and you have to experience both ends of the spectrum, all the way up to the God, all the way back down to the root. And that's the Kundalini, but we're not going to have time to go into Kundalini right now because you folks can't handle that anyway.
Oh, dear.
So in any case, take us home.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to this show of the Soul of the Everyman. And I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael, and thank you very much.